nomad, currently doing a working holiday in Australia based on the, I would normally say sunny Gold Coast, but today it's extremely stormy. So I thought I'd do a follow-on video to my part 1 of moving to Australia. I promised to do a part 2, never did one. So in part 1 I covered everything you need to know to start, so getting your visa, booking your flight, any kind of admin that you need to do before you leave the UK, opening a bank account once you get here, getting your Australian phone number, sorting your tax, your super, your Medicare out. So anything like that, if you haven't watched part 1, go there first. I will link it here. And then I thought I would do this second video to go through some extra things like finding somewhere to live, completing your RSA, finding a job, also some extra bits that I've recently done, so applying for your second year visa, doing a tax return, and then obviously I freelance. So I thought I would also do a bit on if you're planning on freelancing or starting a business and you want to be able to earn an income from that business in Australia, then the things that you'll need in order to do that. So I've written notes down on my phone so that hopefully I don't forget anything to tell you, but I would start with the first, probably most stressful one about moving to Australia. This really stressed me out before I moved here because all I could see on Facebook groups was how much people were struggling to find somewhere to live. But actually, once I got to Australia, I did not struggle at all. I would say that the key is just to be really open with where you're going to live and the type of place that you're looking for. Just because I know people come to Australia, particularly like Sydney, and they're like adamant that they want to live in Bondi, and that's fine. Like obviously it's your Australia journey, so if you've got your heart set on somewhere, that's fine, but it's going to be harder to find somewhere. The prices are going to be so much more. I knew people living in Bondi that were paying like $700 a week in rent, yet where I lived in Neutral Bay, which was just north of the bridge, 10 minutes from the city, I paid only $245 a week. So just be open, I would say, and you'll find somewhere a lot more easily. So where to find somewhere to live? There are a few different places, and I'll also talk you through where I found my places. So there are a couple of websites. Obviously in the UK we've got websites like Rightmove and Spare Room and stuff like that. They have similar here. So the first one is Flatmate Finders, and then the second one is flatmates.com.au. Both are quite good, especially at like getting a feel for the types of places you can get for your budget and the different areas. But they do have, I think, free and paid versions. So I actually found them quite restrictive because there were like some where if the listing's new, unless you're paying for an account, you can't message them for 2 weeks. And obviously if you're looking in a competitive area, not being able to message someone for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks that they've listed their property, is kind of annoying because there'll be loads of other competition ahead of you. So while I did browse these websites, again, to get a feel of the area and things like that, and I did actually view one place in Coogee when I first moved to Sydney, that one I found on Flatmate Finders. I actually ended up finding my Sydney rental in Facebook groups. So I would say join as many Facebook groups as you can. The good ones in particular are the Sydney Inner West and Eastern Suburbs group. And honestly, just be as responsive as you can and quick as you can. As soon as you see somewhere that you like, go and view it as soon as possible. I did look at some places before I moved to Australia, like while I was still in the UK, I was like, as in like looking online, but honestly it just stressed me out, and I found it so much easier to find somewhere once I was in Australia. Then the place that I'm in right now, which is in the Gold Coast, I'm actually South Gold Coast, so I'm right near the border of New South Wales and Queensland. I found this place on Facebook Marketplace, so again, Facebook all the way for finding somewhere to live. A couple of things to note about finding somewhere to live in Australia is it depends kind of what you do in terms of how easy it is. Both times I've sublet a place, so it means I've not gone on the rental agreement. I've just literally essentially like rented the room off of the existing housemate. That makes it super flexible if your plans change and you do want to leave, and also just means that you don't have to really show like proof of income and things like that, which can be a bit problematic when you're first moving to the country, because obviously you might not have a job yet. Another thing to note is that in Australia they pay rent weekly, so you might be looking at home and find somewhere and think, oh my god, that's so cheap. Just note that it would be the weekly price that you're seeing, not the monthly price. And then the other thing to bear in mind is that you will need to pay a bond, usually even if you're subletting, and this is, I think it's 4 weeks. It might vary from state, but I'm pretty sure in both Sydney and the Gold Coast I have paid 4 weeks bond, and obviously it's the same as a deposit in the UK. It just will cover if there's any damage and stuff like that. If everything's fine when you move out, then you'll just get the bond back once you've left the property. I will link all the websites and the Facebook groups in the description like I did for my first video, so everything will be in order that I've spoken about. The next thing I was going to discuss is getting an RSA, and this only applies if you want to work in hospitality. So an RSA is essentially a license that you need in order to sell alcohol to patrons. So whether you're going to work in a bar, a club, a restaurant, sometimes even a cafe, you will need an RSA. So the RSA is state specific. You can, because the laws on service of alcohol changes from state to state, it's not countrywide. You can do an Australia-wide RSA, but as far as I'm aware, it's not valid in New South Wales. And I'm pretty sure New South Wales have some of the strictest alcohol serving rules. So yeah, I did my RSA in New South Wales because that's obviously where I live to start with, and you can do it either online or you can go in person and just do a 1-day course and just get it done there and then, and you have your thing at the end, like you get a little card. Let me see if I can find mine. I still have my RSA card for New South Wales. I'm going to cover my picture because it was horrible. But yeah, you basically, once you've completed the course, you just need to go to a service centre and get your picture taken and just like authenticate your certificate, which is like a paper one, or they email it to you, and then they will create a card and they'll send it to you in the post, and it literally just looks like that. And it's best to just always have it on you because venues can get RSA'd, which is essentially where the police or an RSA officer will come into the venue and ask to check that everyone working on shift has a valid RSA. So the RSA requirements do vary from state to state, and the course content will vary from state to state, which is why the actual qualification will vary from state to state. But this does also mean that the price varies from state to state. So I paid, I think it was $129 for my New South Wales certificate, like to do the course, but in Queensland it's only $20. So it will vary depending on which state you're looking at. But once you have it, it's valid, I'm pretty sure, for like 5 years. So that should obviously see you through, especially if you stay in the same state, it will see you through for like your whole time in Australia. I can't really remember too much about the course, but I do remember that because I did mine online, I was able to start mine before I came to Australia, but I couldn't finish it and authenticate it obviously until I got here. And I also needed my student identifier number. It's called a USI, and it's literally just a student number, and you just put it on your course, and that's the number like on your certificate, so that when you finish the course they know that you were the student. I could start the course without my USI, but once I got to Australia, got my USI, I could then fill it in on my course, which is why I couldn't finish the course until I got to Australia, because you can't get your USI until you are in Australia. And I did my course with Clear to Work, so I'll link them below just in case. They were super easy. And yeah, once you have got your RSA, or even if you're not going to work into hospitality, you might be going into retail or something else, but obviously one thing that you're going to want to do is find a job. So there are lots of different ways to find work in Australia as well. You can go through Facebook groups, but to be honest, like, I didn't, and from what I've seen that's posted on Facebook groups, they are pretty scammy in terms of jobs. So I would say that just be cautious, and if you see anything that looks too good to be true, it's probably fake. So just be careful if you are using Facebook to find a job. If you're looking for hospitality, particularly in Sydney, I found this website Barcats really good. It's actually where I got both of my hospitality jobs. It's kind of like, to quote my old boss at the restaurant, on their end, it's basically like Tinder for employers. So from their perspective, they can just essentially like swipe through candidates. So all I did on my end was I signed up to the website, created a profile, put a picture on there, and put my hospitality experience. Bearing in mind, I had not had any hospitality experience for over 10 years. That didn't matter. Like, honestly, if you haven't done hospitality for a while, or you've never done hospitality, you've only done retail, like, it doesn't really matter too much. Just make your profile as like nice looking as possible and be as flexible as possible. I literally put on there that I was open to doing any shifts at all. Morning, evening, night, any day of the week, give me shifts. And I think that worked in my favour, because I actually got invited to apply to the job that I ended up getting. I didn't even apply for the job. I just got an email saying, we want you to come interview at this restaurant that's opening. And I said, sure, sent them my profile, didn't have to fill in anything. I just said, show them my profile. And yeah, a few days later I had an interview and I got the job on the spot. So yeah, Barcats, very good website for finding hospitality work. If you're looking for other stuff like retail, I did see like quite often signs in windows like Cotton On, Sephora, all sorts of places, Glassons, saying looking for retail staff. Come in with your CV, basically. That's a big thing in Australia that I feel like is not really done in the UK anymore, and that is literally printing off CVs and going foot to pavement and literally just handing in your CV everywhere. And it weirdly still works in Australia, and I actually feel like in quite a lot of cases it's the preferred method for retail and hospitality in particular. If you're gonna try this option, you can print CVs in like any library. So just go into your local library, it's free to get a library card, and then you can print off, I think it's like really cheap, like 20 cents or something to print off CVs. But yeah, so that's another method if you're looking particularly for hospitality and retail. They also do use Indeed here and other kind of job application sites like that. So it's definitely worth signing up and having a look at Indeed Australia to see if you can find anything on there. And another thing to note about finding a job in Australia is that recruitment agencies are massive here. So if you're looking particularly for like a 9-to-5 job or like something a bit more corporate, honestly, just search for any kind of recruitment agencies in the city that you're looking at living and sign up to them, fire off emails. I know so many people that either work in recruitment because it's so big here, or found their corporate jobs through recruitment agencies. And obviously if you're in a corporate job, particularly if it's in an industry that is needed, like recruitment, marketing, web, anything like that, you might even be able to get sponsored. I think that's all really to know with trying to find a job in Australia. I will link all the sites I've mentioned below in the description box. But yeah, I would generally say avoid Facebook, print off your CV and go and hand it out if you're looking for hospitality or retail. And if you're looking for something corporate, recruitment agencies are your friend. So kind of continuing the work theme, you might be or might already have your own business. So whether that's an actual business, maybe you're a beautician or a hairdresser, or I don't know, something like that, or you are a freelancer like me. You might be wondering whether you can still run a business or offer your own services in Australia if you're on a working holiday visa. And the answer to that question is yes, you can. Literally, that's the only answer. You can be self-employed in Australia if you're on a working holiday visa still. You don't have to work for an employer to earn your money. And something which I think is an amazing bonus of being self-employed in Australia is that if you are, so the definition of self-employment or being a freelancer is that you have more than one client, because unfortunately if you only work for one client, you're technically classed, if you work for just one client for longer than 6 months, you're classed then as an employee, because you are only working for one person. However, if you are a freelancer in Australia, or you work for yourself and you're self-employed, the rule of the 6-month limit for working for one employer or client does not apply. So you do not have to change clients every 6 months. You can work for clients for as long as you want, and you don't have that pressure of only being able to work for the same employer for 6 months maximum on your working holiday visa. So this is like a huge weight off your shoulders. Actually, just to add in a quick disclaimer, which I forgot to mention in the previous bit, there is now an exception to the 6-month rule that has been introduced in Australia, which I will put on the screen. But essentially, if you are working in hospitality or the travel industries, the 6-month rule no longer applies to you either. So if you get a job as a waitress or you're working in a cafe, you now don't need to worry about the 6-month limit. You can work for that one employer for the whole year if you want to. And I did that, not for the whole year, but I did work for one employer for longer than 6 months. And it was just so much less stressful than getting or approaching the 6-month limit and thinking, great, now I have to find a new job. And that is for anyone on the working holiday visa. That is not just for UK visa holders. Coming back to running your own business and being a freelancer, yes, you can do it in Australia, and the 6-month rule for working for the same client does not apply. All you need in order to do this is an ABN, which stands for Australian Business Number, and this number you need to put on all your invoices. Very easy to sign up for an ABN. Just do it online on the government website. I again will link it below. Super straightforward. As I've said before, and I said this in part 1, every single thing I've done in Australia has been so straightforward compared to doing it in the UK. The only other thing really to note with being a freelancer in Australia is that obviously you will need to do a tax return at the end of the year. The Australian tax year runs from the 1st of July through to the 30th of June. So unlike the UK one, which runs from the 1st of April to the 31st of March, it's slightly delayed. And then you will need to keep the same kind of records that you keep if you're a freelancer in the UK, which is records of your income, copies of invoices, and copies of expenses, receipts, purchase invoices. The tax return is due by the 31st of October. So you actually have to pay your tax by then, I'm pretty sure. I have done a tax return, but because I was claiming a tax refund, which I'm going to come to in the next step, I haven't actually done a self-assessment tax return yet in Australia, but I know it's the same form and it's a lot simpler than trying to do it in the UK. Obviously you can get an accountant if you prefer to, or you can just do it yourself. Hopefully that makes all sense. Hopefully that is all correct, because that is how I'm running my freelance business in Australia. So if it is wrong, I'm in trouble. As I mentioned, I have done a tax return now in Australia, but this was for getting a tax refund. So in my first year, I only earned an income in Australia through my hospitality jobs. And the good news in Australia, which is different from the UK, is that even if you are employed, you can file a tax return and get a tax refund, because you are able to claim back money that you've spent on things relating to work. So if you've spent money on things like uniform, like meals relating to work, transport relating to work, anything like that, you can claim it on a tax return, even if you're employed, and you can get a tax refund. It's worth doing a tax return on a working holiday visa, because you may have also been paying a higher level of tax, especially if you didn't give your employer your TFN, your tax file number. Go to video 1 if you don't know what a tax file number is. You may have been taxed at a higher rate. So to do a tax return, again, you need to do it before the 31st of October, and you do it all online through the ATO, which is the Australian Tax Office website. It's very simple. When you've signed up to the ATO and you've put in your identifiable details and your TFN number, all of your information about your employment will already be there. So all my income from both the restaurant and the bakery that I worked at was already on there. So they already knew what I'd earned and how much tax I'd paid. So all I had to do was fill in the steps for claiming back any money that I had spent, and basically just ticking, yep, I'm on a working holiday visa, this is my visa information, this is my normal country of residence, which is the UK, and yes or no, do you have Medicare, and have you paid anything towards your Medicare? Then it automatically will work out what they may owe you, and it will give you an estimation. Once you've submitted the form, it will say, we calculate that we owe you roughly this much money, and then you just put in your Australian bank details and they will send the money to you within roughly 2 weeks of you submitting your tax return. It was so easy. Like, when I tell you, this form took me less than 5 minutes to complete, and for full transparency, I'm going to give you my figures. So in my first year of my working holiday visa, I earned 23,000 Australian dollars. That's just through hospitality jobs. And in this time, I got so for earning $23,000, I ended up getting a tax refund of $3,482. And that was literally just paid into my bank account. And it took me less than 5 minutes to do. So please, 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 if I have one piece of advice for you: A, keep your receipts for everything. B, do your tax return, even if you are an employee, even if you are not a freelancer, do your tax return, because you will most likely get a very nice tax refund. But yeah, I think that's everything work related, to be honest, and hopefully you found that helpful. So the next thing that I was gonna do is talk you through applying for your second visa. You can apply for your second visa at any point during your first year, particularly if you're on a visa with a UK passport, because obviously now you do not have to do farm work. So it makes our process, we are very lucky, a lot easier, because we don't need to submit any proof that we've done our regional work. To get your second year visa, all you need to do is go to the Australian immigration website, same one that you would have got your first visa from. Again, I'll link it below, and you need to fill in the form for your second year. It's very easy, it takes less than 10 minutes, it's very straightforward. And because they've already got like most of your information from your first year, as far as I can remember, there actually was like not that much that I needed to fill out. I will say that the price has increased, or at least it has since I applied for my first year visa. I think it's about $650 now, which is just over £300-ish, $360 £70 maybe, I can't really remember because I'm paying in dollars this time and I'm not doing the conversion. But yeah, from memory it was about 650 Australian dollars. I did mine onshore and mine was approved instantly. So as soon as I filled in the form, I got the email, got my visa straight away. I think it's because I'm onshore. I know there seems to be a huge backlog of visas at the moment, and I think it's where the rules have changed. If your second year visa does get approved right away, like it does with mine, you will have the same amount of time, so you'll have a year on it, and the date of the visa will start on the date that your first one expires. So you won't like lose any time if you apply early. The final thing that I was going to talk about, and probably the most fun one, because I feel like this video has been information heavy, is making friends. Obviously, most of you will be moving to Australia on your own, and that can be daunting when you don't know anyone in a new city. And even if you were traveling there alone, it's scary, let alone moving to another country and not knowing anyone. There are tons of ways to make friends, and I feel like as long as you're semi-outgoing and willing to put in the effort that it takes to make new friends, you will be fine. If you're coming to Australia and you haven't yet secured accommodation, the likelihood is that to start with you're probably going to be staying in a hostel, and I'm sure you've stayed in a hostel before, but if you haven't, they are one of the best places to make friends, because everyone who's in a hostel is in the same situation as you. They're all going to be traveling or new to the country, potentially moving here. Most of them are not going to know many people, or if they are, they will have been people that they've met in the hostel as well. And yeah, everyone's going to be like in a similar vibe, same sort of age bracket, same situation, and yeah, they are genuinely the best places to meet people. Then I'll say, if you are getting a job in retail or hospitality in particular, but also if you are getting an office job, you will always meet new people through work. Some of my closest friends in Sydney I met through my hospitality jobs, and yeah, it's just a nice social way to meet people. So I would say, like, I came to Australia planning on just freelancing, but the whole time I was like, I am going to get a hospitality job to start with, even if I only do 5 hours a week, just purely so that I can meet people. They also have tons of Facebook groups for making friends in Australia. So Facebook groups are a great way to do that. And one of my favorites is the Working Holiday Girls. They have a Sydney one, they have a Brisbane one. I'm not sure if they have a Melbourne one, but if they do, I'll link it below. Yeah, that's like a really nice girls group that's been set up by a girl called Bonnie. She came to Australia, I think just a couple of years ago, and basically decided to set up a social friend-making Facebook group. They actually do loads of social events as well in all the different cities, so I will link those below too, because they are a great way to meet people and make friends. I also like to use Bumble BFF, and if you haven't used it before, it's literally the Bumble, like the dating app Bumble, but you just switch the mode to BFF, and yeah, you can just swipe through, and I've actually made so many friends on there. Yeah, it's just a really nice way to like kind of take the edge off by swiping, chatting online, and then kind of planning like going on a brunch date or going on a walk, getting a coffee, going on a night out. It's just a really nice, easy way. I feel like if you can meet a man through Bumble and you're not scared of doing that, meeting a girl and making friends is going to be way less stressful. Finally, another great way to make friends in a new city is by joining social clubs. So whether that's a running club, a hiking club, a netball group, like playing netball, or doing any kind of team sports, joining a gym. Literally, there's so many different clubs you'll be able to find, again, on Instagram or on Facebook. Like, you will be able to find them. I found a nice bushwalking group here on the Gold Coast, which I spoke about in one of my previous videos, and it's literally just so nice because instantly you're around people that have similar interests to you, and you know, there's always going to be something to talk about because you're there for the same actual purpose. Yeah, social clubs are always an amazing way to make friends. I'm not going to go through all the advice on buying a car in Australia, because, and if you are planning on buying a car, I did a completely separate video on buying a car in Australia and all the costs involved and all of the things you need to have. So if you are looking to buy a car when you come to Australia, or any kind of vehicle, camper van, whatever, go and check out that video, because that will tell you everything you need to know, from converting your driving license to buying a car, regoing your car, insuring your car, anything like that you need to know, and the costs involved are in the other video. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope that it was just as useful as part one, because I know I got so many nice messages and comments from part one on how helpful people had found it. So I really hope this second video is also just as helpful. I feel like my social battery is gone now, because I've just been talking to the camera for nearly an hour. But if there is any other things, any other questions you have, or anything else you want to see about moving to Australia on a working holiday visa, do let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.